Hey everybody, welcome back to Front Page Fitness. It is me, Eric Trexler, joined by the Dr. Lauren Colenso-Semple. Lauren, how are you doing tonight?
I am recovering from a traumatic cleaning experience.
Yeah, I saw that in the outline, and I was curious, but I didn't want to pry. I wanted to be just as surprised as our dear listeners. So, how might a cleaning experience turn traumatic?
So, there's a regular cleaning you do, but sometimes you try a deeper clean. You get into those crevices that you don't usually get into. Maybe you don't, since you never wash your sheets, but I do.
Yeah, I'm tidy, but I'm not clean, so this is foreign to me. Deep cleaning is the stage I never get to, but go
Right.
ahead.
So, I was actually cleaning the bookshelf that is behind me and trying to get under the bottom shelf and kind of clear out any dust. I'm down there looking on the underside of the bottom shelf, and I notice these clusters of like small white balls,
Okay.
sort of like the size of the head of a Q-tip, but there was a bunch of them. I'm like, what is that? So I go get a paper towel and I wipe them off. Any idea what they were?
Hmm. Some kind of egg for a bug.
Bingo. They were spider eggs, and when I wiped them off, they started hatching.
Oh wow! So they were um,
Like a good 20 of them. It
just
was
kind of scattering all over the place.
in the paper towel on my hand.
Yeah. And so how do you what is your Dr. LCS reaction to that? Are you someone who screams? Are you someone who is silent but kind of like throws the paper towel away? Like how did that play out?
Maybe if there were other people around, I would have said something, but I just went full like close the paper towel and dispose of it mode.
Okay.
It was a pretty, rational reaction, nothing crazy.
So you just got down to business.
I did, but it was not good, and the chat knew they were spider eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, you know, in my home when I was in college, totally unrelated to our lack of deep cleaning, we had a bit of a mouse problem. And actually, one of the great joys of my life was catching something alive in that kind of context. So we had a big competition. Again, this is just a bunch of college guys. And we knew that we had a mouse problem. Hard to say how many there were, but it was kind of like the big prize was whoever catches a mouse wins. There's no clear indicator what we won, but the pride was on the line. And so I actually rigged up a little trap with one of those big family-sized goldfish cardboard boxes from Costco and an index card with some peanut butter on it. And I kind of crumbled up like a styrofoam takeout container so that I could hear when the mouse was rustling around fiddling with the peanut butter in the box. And lo and behold, I won the competition. I caught the mouse. And so it was kind of, the complete inverse. I was looking, I had this in the midst of cleaning up filth in our home. I ended up with a live thing, but it was by choice, and it was quite an exhilarating experience. But Lauren, that brings me to a fairly traumatic thing I experienced. I haven't told you this yet, but I now am the owner of a very vibrant social life. I went to a dinner with my wife, and dinner conversation was about the book and the film Stuart Little. Have you read the book or seen the film?
Neither.
Are you familiar with the pop culture phenomenon that is Stuart Little?
I am.
Cute mouse, right? Wearing a t-shirt, I believe.
Sure.
So, in the film, as I understand it, I think I saw it a million years ago, but the details eluded me. In the film, I think there's this convoluted storyline where these adult humans adopt Stuart, this little mouse, from an orphanage. And it was revealed to me at this dinner that in the book version, that is not how it goes down. And so there were some serious, some serious changes made by Hollywood to make the story a little bit more palatable. But apparently, the way the story goes in the actual book, and this was news to everyone at the table, we were all alarmed, is that just a human woman, 5 foot whatever, gave birth to a child who was 2 inches tall. And the way the book describes it is this child looked like a mouse in every way, but this was a human boy, which is really a grisly tale when you get down to it. So we were really jarred because I think we shared that childhood experience of cute little Stuart Little the mouse, and it just blew our minds that actually this mouse was born of a human woman and apparently is a human who just happens to look vaguely like a mouse. So do you have any feelings about that, Lauren? Are you as jarred by that as I am?
Isn't that Thumbelina?
I don't know. I mean, are you accusing the author of plagiarism in his
Well,
1940s book?
isn't Thumbelina like a really small? I think it was a human. I don't recall.
Did she look like a mouse?
No,
Uh,
but just the size
Completely
piece
different.
of it.
Completely different.
Right.
First of all, she didn't have a tail. Okay, that's number one. She wasn't covered with fur.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess.
But anyway, that was my gruesome revelation of the week. Not nearly as traumatic as yours, but it did.
Yeah, mine
it,
was way worse.
it really sat with me. Thinking of
Even though
Stuart.
you weren't even really that familiar with the movie or the book.
Correct. Yeah, I made a decision long ago that I was not going to participate in popular culture or really any culture, for that matter. And I've stuck to it, but I'm still aware of what's happening out there. And Stuart Little permeated into my general understanding of the world around me.
I
And
think we have very different thresholds for trauma or
this is a
definitions of.
human man, Lauren. He just happens to be 2 inches tall and have a tail and be covered in fur. That's a jarring thing. This was my cute childhood buddy, Stuart, the mouse. So,
But wasn't it a cartoon, the movie? Or no?
no,
Live
CGI.
action?
It was
Oh, okay.
computer animated, high tech stuff. But I just wanted to bring that to the audience and hope that it affects them in the way it affected me. And hopefully you will think of your life in 2 chapters: the chapter before you learn that information, the chapter after. But Lauren, we have very, very important stuff to do in this episode. The last thing I want to mention, though, is I'm a little bit hurt. You did not comment on my hat. This is
They all look the same.
no, this is a completely novel hat that I've never worn
There's
on
a
the show.
larger D on it.
It is a larger D logo. This is a two-tone hat, and I'm very upset. It's kind of like when you get a nice haircut and you're hoping someone will say something nice about it, and then they don't.
Right.
That is how I feel as we enter the meat of the episode, which starts out with, oh boy, some bad news about marathons. You hate to
Very
see
bad
that.
news.
So let me pull this up on the screen here for the good people watching on YouTube. I don't want to spoil the headline before showing it. All the ways running marathons can wreck your body, from joggers' nipples to colorectal cancer. And this is from the esteemed New York Post, which, as Lauren tells me, is actually different than the New York Times. Two completely separate publications. But Lauren, I think the New York Post, they've got a formula. It's always got to be something with a rectum or something with nipples. It's something that's going to jump out. It's your pee. There's some fart walks going on. They know the buzzwords that are going to really jump off the page and catch your attention. So, Lauren, you know that I at one point was planning to run a marathon and then had debilitating nerve pain that required surgery. Running was my escape from lifting. I was like, well, I can't lift anymore, so now I'll run. And that didn't work either. But did that nerve injury save me? Is it a good thing that I was unable to follow through with that marathon after you've read this?
So I have never had plans to run a marathon, nor do I ever plan on making said plans. But the best part of this article is the section titles throughout, because they're trying to come up with these kind of cutesy, quippy section titles. So the first is Heal Hell, and it talks about, plantar fasciitis, and then Cracked Under Pressure, and they talk about stress fractures, Tendon Trouble, Twist of Pain, Muscle Mutiny, Total Horror, like talking about trauma to the toes from running in bad sneakers, Bubble Trouble, friction blisters, Rubbed the Wrong Way, that's the jogger's nipple,
Ooh.
Fungal frenzy, fungal infections or athlete's foot. Scorched and soaked. You need to watch out for sunburn. Trots and tribulations. I think that's my favorite. This is runner's trots, where, some GI issues. You might need to have diarrhea mid-run.
Hmm.
Um,
And there's still open debate
Heartburn,
over what you're going to
havoc.
do about that, right? We never really fully got to the bottom of what happens when nature
When
calls in
one
that
has to have
regard.
diarrhea mid-marathon. Well,
Yeah,
we talked about peeing. We didn't go to the other hole.
correct. That's a very professional way to put it. Thank you for that.
Brain drain, overworked organs, muscle meltdown, water woes, cardio complications, and the big C. So basically, this whole article is talking about like mild, obvious issues that you might happen upon from long distance running outside. So, we should probably not, be mindful of our training so we're not overdoing it. We need good shoes. We should be wearing sunscreen. Um, the the diarrhea I don't have a solution for. The overworked organs was a big fear monger that you might sustain an acute kidney injury. But the big headline here was that there was a study of 100 people aged 35 to 50 who had competed in at least 2 ultra marathons or 5 standard marathons, and they did a colonoscopy in a handful of them. They didn't collect data or control for any other variable whatsoever, but they did report that there were more precancerous growths in this sample than usual if they had picked another sample, allegedly.
Yeah, which is odd. I mean, they do mention in the article here. There's a quote: "For most people, regular exercise is highly protective, and the key message is moderation, not fear." Yeah, it's. I'd be curious to hear any proposed mechanism by which, a lot of running would nullify, if not reverse, those protective effects that we see with moderate amounts of physical activity. But yeah, physical activity is an independent an independent predictor of colorectal cancer risk, and it certainly in the majority of research has a protective effect. So very, very odd to see that. I will say, my 2 cents on this article, if I may, Lauren. First of all, plantar fasciitis, that'll get you. You got to be careful out there, folks. And it doesn't matter if you're running a marathon or if you're just kind of getting into it and running less than a marathon. I think that is the most the most substantive elements of this article are the obvious ones, which are a lot of people when they get into running, whether it's for a marathon or something else, they jump in at a time when they are extremely motivated. And you got to be careful about that because your motivation may outpace your lower body's ability to sustain a rapid increase in running volume. So the most legitimate element of this article is anything related to the lower body. You're going to have to ease into the kind of mileage that a lot of people like to do. And I've touched that stove many, many times, and I'm sure I'm going to touch it again. But every time I get into running, I'm on a collision course with blisters on my feet and plantar fasciitis because I don't know. I can't help myself. So do as I say, not as I do, and make sure you're being very cautious with introducing that running volume. The other thing I want to mention, Lauren, is I don't know if you noticed this when you did when you started studying the human body as a means of your profession, but I look at some of these studies in like a fundamentally different way. So, for example, the header that they said brain drain, a 2025 study found that marathon running can cause a temporary reduction in brain myelin, the fatty insulating layer around nerve fibers. Now, when I read that, I actually saw that paper right when it came out. I think I might have even messaged everyone in mass about it, like, how cool is this? when you start studying physiology as a career, you see stuff like that and it doesn't scare you. You just say, oh my God, no way. Like I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. That the body is so adaptable and has so many mechanisms to just get the job done. And it's like, oh, sure would be nice to have a little extra energy. What if we just kind of trimmed a little fat around the neurons in the brain and actually access that myelin? Like that's a really incredible adaptation. And it's really amazing that that we even found out that happens. Like, yeah, I just think science like that is so cool. But the one thing you'll notice is like, even in the paper that came out, as I remember it, I could be misremembering, but it did not, you didn't read the paper. I don't think they made any scary claims in it, and I certainly didn't take away any fear from it. I was just like, oh, cool. I didn't know your body could tap into that. No way. But yeah, basically, it appears that your brain myelin drops a little bit and essentially gets metabolized, and then it recovers. So terrifying, Lauren. Absolutely. It's the Halloween special that we're recording 4 days late here. Your body will use energy and then replenish the storage. Scary stuff.
Yeah, this will be a recurring theme throughout some of the other discussions we're gonna have tonight is the actual science and how horrifically it was represented either in mainstream media or social media.
Now, Lauren, if I may, I'm going to put you on the therapy couch here. Why are you so averse to the idea of running a marathon? I mean, you were a track and field athlete. As I remember it, that is how you got your start in the fitness world.
I was, and then I got a stress fracture, also known as heel hell. No, cracked under pressure.
You can handle it.
And and I wasn't running crazy volumes. I was doing like 5 miles on a treadmill a few times a week, and I got a stress fracture. And a stress fracture is the most annoying because there's literally nothing you can do about it except rest. And that means you're not supposed to walk on it. And when you live in Manhattan, that's incredibly inconvenient because you're in a boot hobbling around and you have to walk or take the subway, which involves more walking. So,
And people walk very fast there.
yes,
As a
gotta
Southern
get where you're
gentleman
going.
myself, I take issue with the pace of movement on those sidewalks.
Oh, no, we don't like slow walkers. Slow walkers are annoying. They're in the way. Get out of the way.
Slow walkers are just enjoying their life.
It's the
And
worst. Like a tourist walking around staring up at the tall buildings, like, wow. No, you're annoying. Go home.
no, I got that message loud and clear.
Okay.
But it's interesting because you'll talk to New Yorkers, and when you're there, if you're like me, a slow walking gentleman of the South, they will make it very clear to you, you're not wanted here. We prefer that you go home.
Yes.
And then when you go home and you say, you know what, I went to New York and it wasn't my cup of tea, then they will get livid. What do you mean it wasn't your cup of tea? And it's like, well, the whole time I was there, you made it very clear to me that you didn't want me there. So I thought you were trying to tell me this was not my cup of tea. So yeah,
And don't ask for directions because we think that you're trying to sell us something, and so we will ignore you.
yes. Also, someone harassed me trying to get me to buy a CD-ROM of some music that they
Oh,
made.
yes.
You're going to get some of
Yes.
that.
Very common.
Vibrant City. But anyway, Lauren, when you were in track and field, what event did you run? Why were you doing these 5 mile runs?
This was so I ran track in high school and I was a sprinter. I did 100 meters, 400 meters.
Okay.
But I used to run uh, in my early 20s. And then I got the stress fracture, completely lost all of my running gains as one does when they don't run for a few months. And I was over it. I found lifting and I never looked back.
Yeah. Do you remember? I don't know if you'll remember this as vividly as I do. The first time I ever interviewed you in a recorded setting.
Yes, I do.
So like, this was back in the day. This is many years ago, and fitness podcasts had a format. Basically, I'm the interviewer. I'm gonna lob up some softballs, and you're gonna knock them out of the park. So I give you a volley. You play with it for a few minutes, and then I'll chime back in. And I remember we could find the actual tape somewhere. It exists, I'm sure. But I was livid, bringing on a great personal risk. You know, I put my reputation on the line
You
to
did.
have you interviewed. And the first softball, going to give you an opportunity to run with it. I said, so tell me about the origin story. How'd you get into fitness? And you're like, well, I got into track and then I started lifting. And then there was this dead air. And I was like, that's your origin story? You're not going to talk about your uh, education, the research that you do? No, I did track and now I lift sometimes. So anytime we can get you back on track on that topic, I know that you're going to have at least 7 words to share. So
There you go.
I appreciate you going
You're
down memory
welcome.
lane with me there. That was honestly, I like to think that I'm a pretty adaptable interviewer. That was the only time I'd ever been absolutely stuck, just absolutely thrown for a loop and unable to continue. Was when you gave me like a 6-word answer to your entire life story and then looked at me as if I was supposed to respond to it.
I
Truly,
think if I remember correctly, you had to edit out the dead air.
that would make sense. I could not I couldn't fathom that that was all you were going to say. And then we just stared at each other for 30 seconds. I said, "Oh my god, this was the first question. I'm sure the next 90 minutes is going to be just a treat." All right, Lauren. Let's move on here. I'm seeing a headline here that is truly disturbing. Uh-oh. No, I was going to show it on the screen, but the ad blocker that you gave me makes it such that I can't even visit this website. But it says the headline you put was apparently toothpaste is made for men. What is the story?
Yeah, so this is the latest in the usual narrative that everything was designed for men, and so women need something different. And so this has been floating around, and the argument is that women's saliva is naturally more acidic than men's saliva. And so you shouldn't be using this male toothpaste because it's not appropriate in caring for your enamel, and perhaps women would be at a greater risk of some dental problems down the road. Of course, they bring in hormonal factors that there might be changes throughout the menstrual cycle or a reduction of pH in the menopause transition that make you more prone to oral health problems. Long story short, um, it doesn't seem like there's much substance here, but the people who are promoting this are trying to say that women should buy toothpastes with xylitol,
Okay.
which are notably a bit more expensive.
Are they pink
Um,
though?
Maybe they are, so if you're somebody who has not yet capitalized on the She Paste brand, maybe it's the time to do so.
Yeah, what you do is you make it pink, slightly more expensive, and much smaller, so that people have to come back to the store many, many times.
Yes, like a long, slender, very feminine tube.
Yeah. And I'd put on it, fits in your purse, right? Because who would possibly leave the house without their toothpaste? So Lauren, it sounds like you're not completely sold yet, but you do see an opportunity there. There's a market opening that someone can capitalize on.
You know, I feel like every week it's something new around all everything is designed for men. Women need something different, and let's insert whatever that is. But I didn't see this one coming. It caught me by surprise.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Lauren, what is your go-to toothpaste? Do you have are you like very loyal to a certain brand?
I'm actually not. I used to use whitening toothpastes, and then the dentists told me that I should use a sensitive toothpaste and I should switch to the soft brush. I always had the hard brush. I thought that was better. Apparently, it's not.
Yeah.
So, I have made some changes to my dental hygiene in the past couple of years using the softer brush, using the Sensodyne toothpaste.
Has your dentist said anything about the snake tongue?
No, but I did go to the dentist a couple of weeks ago and I had like some pain just in between two teeth on one gum when I flossed. And it had been going on for about a week. And so I mentioned it during the cleaning. And she couldn't really see anything. The dentist came in, he couldn't really see anything. They're like, yeah, maybe just floss too aggressively, whatever. And he leaves. And she says, you know, maybe it's perimenopause.
No way.
I swear.
You have, is that a thing
It's
that
like,
happens?
what? Like, you know, I'm a little young, but also, you're, no offense, you're a dental hygienist.
So she was, man, I
I,
wanted,
I mean, it was just so apropos given, the world in which I live.
yeah,
The-
you should have just insisted on the spot. Open up whatever social media app you choose to waste your time with, whether it's Instagram or TikTok. I want to see your like discover page or the for you page.
yeah.
I want to see how deep this goes with you in the sense that whenever there's an unsolved mystery, it's like, could be perimenopause.
I mean, why
If you're a
not?
woman between the age of 12 and 90 and you have an unsolved problem, it very well could be. You never know. So you really can't escape this stuff.
No.
That's pretty bad.
Like, it's 8 o'clock in the morning at the dentist. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, dentist is probably the last place I ever would have thought about that. Okay, so well, we will all be sending wishes and prayers and positive thoughts that your flossing related pain subsides.
Well, it has resolved, so maybe I'm on the other side of the menopause transition by that logic.
Yeah, well, hey, that wasn't so bad, was it?
It was very quick.
Yeah, much ado about very little. Uh, Now it is weird. I don't understand dental hygiene. I participate in it. I do what you're supposed to do because I don't feel like wagering too much on this skepticism. But I don't know. I feel like it's odd to me that we would have this human mouth that requires such novel instances of care. And I'm like, I feel like we used to get by. Obviously our food supply has changed a lot. I'm not going like full conspiracy theory mode here, but people make it work without like the special triple formulated whitening, tartar control, extra enamel toothpaste. So I'm putting this out there into the world. Dental industrial complex. I'm on to you. I know what's
Oh,
happening.
you think there's some grifting going on?
I think it's very possible, Lauren, that we've been lied to our whole lives, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this if it's the last thing I do. So after
I think the same thing is going on in the deodorant industry.
oh
Why
yeah,
are there so many, and are they that different?
yeah, and why are they? What's in it, Lauren? Is it the same stuff that they're using to make all the clouds up there? I don't know. Isn't that
Someone in
aluminum?
the chat said fluoride is bad for testosterone.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a whole other thing. Oh my God, Lauren, that reminds me. Just to get us back slightly on track, I'm just going to drop a teaser here. In the upcoming issue of the Mass Research Review, one of the biggest kind of like panics on the bro side of this whole everyone worried about their hormones world is what they call what's the word for it? I think the term is I forget the term, but testosterone levels on average appear to be dropping over time, and there's a new study that suggests that a lot of the studies that make this claim are pulling it from the NHANES data set. There's a new study making the case that they just switched assays. And so they're like, no, you just changed the way you measured it, and now they just look lower. But they're probably not all that different than they used to be once you account for the fact that we're just a little bit, we have a little more body fat, and that's going to increase some conversion of testosterone to estrogen. So, yeah, interesting stuff going on in the testosterone world. I'm going to write that article. I'm not prepared to deliver a full conclusion on it yet, but keep an eye on that space because I think a lot of people are either going to be relieved by that new piece of evidence or they are going to reject it with every fiber of their being, depending on what grift they're running.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from the folks that do this very often that there's a ton of issues with the way that it's been measured in many studies because you're also not necessarily accounting for people who have higher sex hormone binding globulin levels, and so it's not only testosterone in the blood at a given time, but so even if you are taking testosterone therapy, it's kind of unreliable to keep measuring the blood levels because they might not change, and that's just the nature of the measurement. It's not that it's not having any effect, but anyway.
Yeah. Lauren, a huge thing in the chat. I just need to know. Have you ever heard of whole body deodorant?
Like Axe body spray.
We have someone in the chat who, first of all, used a bad word, but they refer to something called whole body deodorant. And I am now dying to know what that could possibly refer to. Do you have a search device handy?
Well, presumably it's just a spray, no? Are you actually rubbing a stick all over your body?
I don't know. We need the chat to come in clutch here. This is time sensitive, folks. Please let us know what in the world you're referring to. If it's Axe body spray, then I would say that that's underselling it because I was in junior high when Axe body spray was at its peak. And I can tell you with certainty that was not just whole body deodorant. That was room deodorant. You would create essentially a toxic cloud that middle school aged men, boys, would walk through. And I remember our junior high actually had to have an intervention, like a school-wide intervention where they sat us down and said, hey, here's how deodorant works. Here's how it doesn't work. What you're doing with Axe body spray is illegal and it's detestable. And shame on you, children. Lauren, do you have any answers?
Axe body spray is absolutely disgusting, and I think it still exists, and I have no idea why. As are all Axe products. Don't buy them.
Well, I like their 5-in-1 body wash, shampoo,
No.
toothpaste.
Oh.
Your very bad dogs are acting up. But okay, what's this whole body deodorant? Okay.
I apologize. Can you take this?
Yes. So Lauren is handling, essentially, it sounds like you run a dog pound. But in reality, there's about 11 pounds worth of dog in Lauren's house. It just happens to be distributed amongst 3 very tiny dogs. But all right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next story here, if I can bring up my window. So Lauren's headline here is, your brain eats itself after menopause, which is, I mean, what more could you say? Lauren, I don't know if you can still hear me, but I'm going to go ahead and play the next video about, I guess, your brain gets eaten after menopause. So I'm going to play that with the volume here. Oh no, it went straight to an ad. This is horrible, Lauren. What a disaster.
Well, I'll pick up on the
I
whole
got
body
it.
deodorant.
That are going to crash.
Whole body deodorant is not only it is a whole body deodorant. It comes labeled with explicit or less.
Did I
than
hear
subtle
this
nods
correctly?
to private areas. And there are some reasons why maybe you shouldn't use it.
I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm not gonna lie. This has been chaos. The dogs are going crazy. I'm fumbling with links. Can you read that back to me one more time?
About full body deodorant?
Yes. What is it?
Yeah. So it is what it sounds like, an array of sticks, creams, and sprays, promising whole body odor control that come labeled with explicit or less than subtle nods to private areas.
Okay. So you're just rubbing it all over your whole body.
Correct.
All right. Count me out. That sounds like a lot of work. All right, Lauren. I'm going to try to unfumble with this and actually play this the right way. So I'll let you know when it's over because I know you can't hear it.
That Dr. Brinton said, after menopause, when estrogen goes down, the brain can't utilize glucose, so the brain eats itself. Did I get that right? Clear this up for me. I'm like, this is what I heard. And you're like, yep.
A female's brain literally eats itself during menopause if you don't replace it with hormone replacement therapy. Estrogen in the brain does multiple things. One of them is it helps with glucose metabolism. What do we see in women at the onset of menopause? We see a reduction in brain glucose metabolism of 20 to 30%. So when the brain cells don't have glucose to operate, to function, glucose is the main primary fuel source for the brain. What does it do? Well, it doesn't sit there in a starved state because neurons are smart and they're hungry. So it says, how can I feed myself? And I don't have any available ketones right now. So it makes its own ketones by using the fat in the brain. Your brain is literally just eating itself.
All right, Lauren, that is horrifying. Your brain is eating itself because glucose is low. This is, if I'm not mistaken, Lauren, is this the person who we felt had made themselves out to sound like a neurosurgeon and is in fact not a neurosurgeon?
Yeah, she's not a medical doctor of any kind.
What did it say in her profile that...
it says neurosurgery, just point blank.
yes. And, which is... honestly, shame on us for thinking that a person who puts neurosurgery in their bio is a neurosurgeon. That is not the claim she made. She just said neurosurgery exists. It's out there. Some people do it. I'm a fan. I'm an aficionado. I love sometimes
It's
watching.
a neurosurgery enthusiast.
Yeah, I read books. I watch videos, of surgical theaters. And so that was our fault. But our favorite non-neurosurgeon is back at it again. So where do you want to go with this, Lauren, aside from sadness?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bad one because there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about the effect of menopause hormone therapy on cognition and on dementia, Alzheimer's. It's a very an important area of research that needs more research. And so to kind of put this out there is another example of A, fear mongering that everyone needs to be on hormone therapy, and B, just completely misrepresenting the effect of the decline in estrogen and menopause transition on brain function.
Yeah. That was, I got to be honest, it's bonus points for creativity because I guess I've been in the metabolism world too long, but when I heard her starting to say, well, the glucose gets low because there's not enough estrogen around, and then your neurons are hungry, and she said, and it's going to be bad unless you blank. And I thought that, she was going to tell me, okay, I got to eat something, right? Unless you take creatine, unless you give it carbs, unless you increase your, go on a ketogenic diet. I'm used to all the fill in the blanks. I'm not used to your brain will eat itself unless you go on hormone therapy because, Lauren, and this may shock you. I don't know how deeply you've looked into this, but the percentage of women post-menopause who are on hormone therapy is less than 100.
That's true.
By a wide margin. And they still have brains.
They have brains.
They're walking around. The brain not only has it not fully eaten itself, the degree to which it's eaten itself is apparently minor because people seem to be doing just fine. So how does a science nerd like you make sense of that?
Well, and riddle me this. I think 100 years ago, there were no people on hormone therapy.
That is true.
And they were also doing things, and some might say pretty important things
Yeah.
later in life. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, well, first we can just address the claim itself, which is yes, glucose is the primary energy source for the brain, but it can tap into other energy sources as well. And I mean, the ketogenic diet is a great example of this. And when we think about the menopause transition in and of itself, if less glucose is available, then there are still other energy sources. And so really the nuanced or the actual claim in humans would be to say there might be some flux in energy source and the overall brain metabolism throughout this transition, but that's those changes are transient. They aren't permanent. And they aren't going to have all these negative ramifications. And the connotation your brain is eating itself is scary. It sounds like something is terribly, terribly wrong. And the other person in this reel, Kelly Casperson, went on the following day or days and said, um, you know, uh, anabolism and catabolism are normal processes. I don't understand what everyone's freaking out about. And it's like, you didn't say that there was, a change in the anabolic or catabolic state or overall metabolism using those kinds of phrases. You literally said the brain is eating itself. That to me doesn't say, subtle differences in catabolic versus anabolic processes.
Right.
So I mean, I resent the whole thing. It's such a misrepresentation of what's going on. And the fact that hormone therapy is actually going to do anything is not even something that is supported by the literature. When we look at the influence of hormone therapy throughout the menopause transition and effects on long-term brain function or protective effects against dementia, Alzheimer's, etc.
Yeah, I think one of the things that always bothers me about these types of arguments, and I don't know, I'm sure I've done it, but when these things get clipped and create responses that are quite a lot of people are concerned about them or really intrigued by it, this is like a multi-step description, this kind of logical flow of this hormone goes down, which means this availability goes down, which means needs to tap into this, but that's not going to be available, so it's going to go to this instead. When you go through that whole song and dance and don't give me a single magnitude of effect, I tend to check out. And I think that's like a fairly decent heuristic when you're hearing something. If you're trying to decide, like, should I panic about this? The first thing I think through is, like, was this actually explained with a level of detail that seems like it is tethered to reality, right? So not just a bunch of directional statements, but if you're telling me the brain is going to eat itself, I need to get some indication of to what extent, right? Are we talking about an extreme level of atrophy that is not compatible with life? Are we talking about, minor, eating away at some of that myelin to liberate a little bit of energy in the short term, which, as we talked about previously, doesn't seem to matter at all. So I need a magnitude of this type of drop in estrogen, this magnitude of drop in estrogen causes this magnitude of shift in substrate utilization, which causes this energy need in the brain, which causes it to tap into this much mass of fill in the blank. And so without those magnitudes, the whole kind of logical flow of the argument is just really lacking in depth to the point that it's hard to take it seriously. And at the end of the day, it gives you nothing to work with in terms of, like, should I worry about this or not? All these directional statements end up with an argument that is totally vague and not remotely actionable. And so that would be my one piece of advice to people who consume content of any sort is, when people are trying to drag you through this meandering tale of this goes down and that goes up and then this goes down and now your brain's eating itself, if you're in a platform, or you're on a platform or in a venue that allows you to push a little bit, I encourage you to push those content creators and say, how much, to what extent, and is it a large enough effect to matter? And if you ask those questions time over time, what you're going to find is people who get these really highly viewed clips that get people really excited or scared, once they actually have to put a magnitude on it, either one, they're going to have no ability to do that because they don't understand the physiology well enough, or number two, when they actually do put a magnitude on it, it's not very interesting. And so then that's like the whole jig is up, right? If you can't make it interesting and splashy and scary, then it's just going to become boring.
Or as people were doing with the acetaminophen and pregnancy and autism argument, you can explain this very overly simplified mechanistic rationale, but just because you can say, well, this this is involved in the regulation of that. So clearly, if this decreases, then that decreases, and therefore that happens, and then this happens. It's a overly simplified explanation that rarely is that simple, because human physiology is more complex than that. So when one thing changes, many other things are changing as well. And there are the internal factors, and then there are external factors, and all of those are playing together. So certainly when we think about long-term brain health, we're not living in this vacuum of, oh, here is pre-menopause and let's flip the switch, and here is post-menopause and nothing else you do matters. It's not about your all of the education that you are engaged in. It's not about genetic factors. It's not about all of the lifestyle factors. It's not about you staying, cognitively engaged. It's not about family history, like all of the things. It ignores all of that to just be that reductionist, to say this and therefore that. Those kinds of arguments, they don't play out. They don't work like that. Those are the arguments that people use to say, we should stop eating fruit or we need to rely on the glycemic index, or fat makes you fat. All these types of claims.
You gotta stop smoking cigarettes, even though it's all you enjoy in your day. Like, give me a break. Always coming up with this crap.
Totally.
That's from my wife. Her dissertation was on helping people stop smoking. So I always, I have to take the other side of it sometimes,
Sure.
All right, Lauren, speaking of, what's the correct term for this again? Is it
hormone therapy, menopause hormone therapy?
Yeah, because I'm getting the wrong term in this Instagram clip that I'm going to show for you, and I don't want to get in trouble for it again. You're baiting me into getting in trouble for this crap. So the next headline here, as you put it, estrogen-based hormone therapy prevents heart disease and cancer with a question mark. So I'm going to play the video. I will let you know when it's over.
So as it turns out, not only are you going to feel better, but there are actually protective factors when you start estrogen therapy before you're officially menopausal. So the Menopause Society is having their annual meeting, and they just presented a study that showed that starting estrogen in the pre-menopausal phase may protect you against breast cancer, stroke, and cardiovascular disease. Now, I think historically people thought that you had to wait until you were in menopause to start estrogen therapy, but if you think about it, it really seems like it would be beneficial to give estrogen back as the natural levels are declining in perimenopause. In this study, they looked at over 120 million patient charts and compared the patients who started estrogen in perimenopause or within 10 years before menopause compared to the people who started it after menopause or didn't ever start hormones at all. And what they found was that the patients who started hormone replacement therapy within 10 years before menopause had a 60% lower odds of developing breast cancer, stroke, and heart attacks. And there were still benefits seen for the patients who started after they were menopausal. If they started within 10 years, they had a lower risk of developing breast cancer and stroke, but did have a higher likelihood of having a heart attack. So for my elder millennial sisters out there who are in perimenopause, your periods are starting to be irregular, you're starting to feel those hot flashes, there may be additional benefits to starting hormone replacement therapy.
All right, Lauren. So I'm showing them the headline now. Studies suggest earlier start of hormone therapy optimizes long-term health outcomes. And in that video, they use the term millennial elder. And that is something that always strikes my ear wrong. I feel like I'm still used to millennials being the kids that, we blame them for being too lazy and they don't have any values and kids ain't what they used to be. So hearing millennial elder just makes me feel extremely, extremely old. But Lauren, we've all heard all the buzz about people saying, hey, you should be taking, hormone therapy after menopause. Now this is saying actually start during perimenopause and maybe even before perimenopause. So what is your thought on this, being an expert in the area?
So this was a disaster that I think you'll appreciate.
Okay.
The Menopause Society had their annual meeting.
Okay.
And as one does at a conference, people come and present conference abstracts. So maybe they present a poster, maybe they present an oral presentation. And as you know, often you might present something that is an incomplete data set or you're trying to slice off a piece of a larger study to give an undergrad student an opportunity to present at a conference.
Yeah,
This is
here you go, kid, play with
unpublished
this. Yeah.
data. It's not peer reviewed. Hopefully at some point it will be, but often the findings that are in the abstract might change when it's actually published in its final form, all those things.
Yeah,
The
we're doing a
Menopause
study with
Society-
100 people, and here we're presenting the first 6.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Menopause Society issued a press release before this abstract had even been presented at the conference. This press release was picked up by media and all over social media. It just blew up with these claims. Now, this was an analysis of patient records. So as a healthcare provider, you're entering the code into the patient records, and now there's a large enough database that you can, as a researcher, go in and do these kind of retrospective analyses. So it was reported that this was done in 120 million people. It wasn't. There are 120 million patient records in the database, but it was 150,000 women who kind of fell into this category. And they were trying to look at women who were never prescribed estrogen-based hormone therapy, women who were prescribed estrogen-based hormone therapy at some point in the 10 years before menopause, and women who were prescribed estrogen-based hormone therapy at some point in the 10 years post-menopause. And the idea was, well, we know a lot about, initiating hormone therapy at or post menopause, but not as much about what happens beforehand. And the Women's Health Initiative definitely explored some of these questions in that latter half. Like, would it predispose you to an increased risk of some of these diseases? And ultimately, they looked at these 3 groups, and then any subsequent incidents of breast cancer, stroke, or heart attack. And they'd found that if you were initiating it earlier, there wasn't an increased odds or hazard ratio of these diseases. And this got so flipped to then say everyone should be going on estrogen-based hormone therapy ASAP to prevent or protect against cancer, stroke, heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah. I love when the results of a study get completely distorted from their original meaning or flipped. I think for those of us who are not deeply immersed in the menopause world, one of the best examples of that is a lot of people have heard that vegetarians or vegans need to be supplementing with creatine because specifically for their brain. So a lot of people will tell you, yeah, there's a study that came out and creatine had a way bigger impact on improving memory for vegans than it did for omnivores. So it makes sense. Vegans, they don't get enough creatine in their diet, so their brain creatine goes down, and now their memory doesn't work, and they're dumb. Well, the problem is, as far as we can tell, every time it's been tried, the majority of the evidence that has tried to measure brain creatine levels in vegans versus omnivores or vegetarians versus omnivores shows no difference. Turns out we like to regulate our brain creatine levels very well because it's a huge energy buffer for the most energy intensive organ we have. And if that organ runs out of energy, we're immediately dead. So we're pretty invested in keeping creatine levels adequate in our brain. And if you do have a genetic condition where you are unable to do that, it's catastrophic. There are creatine transporter deficiencies that are hereditary, and they're absolutely catastrophic. But anyway, in this study, what happened was, for reasons that I'll never understand other than, sampling error, tough luck, whatever, what happened was this omnivore group, before and after supplementation with creatine, they took this memory test and they got way dumber. The official interpretation of that, if you look at the data and have a couple brain cells to rub together, is creatine makes omnivores extremely stupid. And what happened in the vegan group was they just did not get as stupid over time. And because they didn't have this immense drop off from pre-testing to post-testing and what was supposed to be a memory test of equivalent rigor, just because the omnivores got dumber, people spun it and they were like, oh, vegans need this because they get this huge boost in memory, presumably because their baseline memory is trash. And it's like, no, at baseline they were equal. Creatine made omnivores dumb, and therefore everyone's running around saying, you vegans better get on creatine today, if not yesterday. So this stuff happens, Lauren.
Yeah.
So it makes me. What is your view on hormone therapy in the perimenopause and postmenopause time of life? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Are you talk to your doctor and figure out what's right for you-ish?
Well, it seems to be really effective and has good data to support the efficacy for symptoms. If you have their kind of vasomotor symptoms, your urogenital symptoms, then it can be really effective for that. But to go on it solely in the hope that you're going to prevent or protect against insert whatever, the claims are out there for literally everything. I think we definitely don't have the data to support that, and it's not without risk. Some people really don't tolerate it well. There are various, forms and doses, and you're going to need to kind of manage all of that, and there are reasons why it's not appropriate for everyone. So I think this narrative that it's the end all be all and it's your kind of solution to everything is really problematic because I mean the data isn't there, and because it tells people for whom they've tried it and it didn't work for them, or perhaps they have a medical history that would make it not the best course of treatment for them, then you think, oh, I'm missing out on all of these tremendous health benefits, and that really isn't the case. And it just really pisses me off that there's a large group of loud voices online saying you must do this or you're screwed.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me. I published a paper last year, and I've got another paper that's almost ready to submit, looking at inflammation levels with hormonal, estrogen-containing contraceptives. And what's really fascinating to me is this kind of mirror image world, or like kind of parallel universe where on one hand, there's a lot of concern about the deleterious effects of taking exogenous estrogen at this earlier stage of life. And is it disastrous or is it okay? Like that's kind of where the window seems to be setting in terms of the range of arguments, where some people are like, oh yeah, you should absolutely not be taking exogenous estrogen as a, in the form of birth control at this age because it has all these terrible outcomes and, they're poisoning you, blah, blah, blah.
Which, by the way, is at an extremely low dose.
Yes. But then on the other side, it's like, after menopause, it's like this should be the default human condition, is to everyone be taking exogenous estrogen. And that window of discussion is framed where it's either benign or pure upside. And I'm like, I understand that there's differences in stage of life and there's differences in dosage, but it is very striking to me as the female sex hormone expert that I'm like, could you all get in a room, the people who are talking about this as if it's like pure downside or maybe benign, and then the people over here saying it's either pure upside or maybe just irrelevant? Like, can we just get together and have some kind of symposium about what estrogen's up to, and maybe have a little bit more of a balanced assessment of what happens early in life, what happens later in life, and what happens in between? Because the only thing I know for sure about the estrogen discourse is that it is extreme, and it doesn't really matter if it's extreme in one direction or the other. It will be extreme wherever you happen to parachute into those conversations.
Yeah, and you kind of layer in the testosterone conversation on top of that, for which there's even less evidence, and there are people really pitching that. And so then you're layering different hormones. Plus, most people, when they're taking an estrogen-based therapy, they're also taking a progestogen. So it's not nothing, you know, like we're all, I just feel like we're living in this time where everyone's like, cool, I want all the hormones, I want all the peptides, let's microdose the GLP-1s, let's just, we're going all in. And you'd think that, given the whole purpose of this is supposed to be health oriented, we might pause and say, is this the best idea? Like, do we want to just think, why not? Like, let's just in case. I don't want to wait for that's the narrative though. I don't want to wait. I can't afford to wait for the data. So I want it now because it might be helpful, without the acknowledgement that, well, it could be harmful. We don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not. But if it's like a net neutral with a potential for risks, or even unknown interactions, or even just nailing down the dose, like I don't, that narrative scares me. That
Yeah.
people are, I get it with, if someone wants to take, 10 grams instead of 5 grams of creatine, like, it's okay. But when we get into the hormone world, and certainly the peptide world, the whole thing just makes me very uneasy.
Yeah, and it's, I'm always baffled by how definitively people talk about this stuff, because like with our work, we found pretty consistently now, and it's a finding that we're not the first, and it seems pretty consistent. I feel pretty confident in it. We tend to find that CRP levels, C-reactive protein, it's kind of the most common biomarker of inflammation. It tends to go up a little bit when people use particularly oral hormonal contraceptives containing estrogen. And so we've documented this in multiple forms of evidence now. Some has been published, some not yet. And when we discuss it, we're always very, very careful to give it the sensitivity it deserves, in saying that, first of all, widespread access to effective contraceptives, there's a huge social element of that can't be overlooked. Then there's the medical element, which is, we had these initial high estrogen dose oral hormonal contraceptives that, were deemed a little riskier than they needed to be in order to be effective. And so then they, tweaked it, went from first generation to second generation, dropped the estrogen dose. And so when you're talking about, the modern day landscape of making that decision, in our papers, we kind of conclude you got to get with your doctor. And there are, medical best practices involved with deciding for you, do we really care if your CRP goes up 0.5 or 1 milligrams per liter? I think it's been a while since I looked at that paper. I might be fudging the units, but if it goes up by 1 unit, are we super concerned about that based on your overall comprehensive risk profile and your current state of cardiometabolic health? And there's going to be some people for whom a physician might say, I'd prefer that we didn't accept a kind of on the top increase in CRP. And for other people, I'm not concerned about it at all. But yeah, it's not to get too far off into a tangent, but when you are doing science in this area, you have to report your findings and interpret those findings with a great deal of caution and nuance. And then part of me wonders, why bother?
Well, even when you do, then other people
goes.
are going to run with them anyway. In
Yeah.
every example here, when you see some citation, including that abstract I mentioned, the scientists didn't say that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really frustrating, because it's you see these people who, and they spoke up, but they don't have those loud voices, so the damage was already done. And this
Yeah.
happens time and time again, where you got the people who are actually doing this work, and then people are just twisting the narrative. And in many cases, you'll get the comment from the actual senior author saying, "Thank you for highlighting this. However, that's not what we said. It's not what we concluded. That's not even what we did."
Yeah.
And it just falls on deaf ears. Like 5 people see that, and 2 million people see whatever the original post was.
Yeah, and it's hard to deal with because, like, I actually listen, you know, you submit papers, reviewers, they're going to like them, they're going to not like them, whatever. It is what it is. That paper was the first time, because I usually don't study controversial things at all, not remotely. That was the first time that I ever got reviews back, and I feel like the paper got rejected from the first journal purely because they didn't want to touch it. I feel like they saw it. We submitted it at a time when there was like this huge political intersection with birth control, and it was like all over TikTok and stuff, and it was highly controversial, strong opinions. And I very strongly believe that the journal found our findings to be very inconvenient, not in the sense that they were wrong or that we interpreted them in a way that was inflammatory or kind of putting fuel on this fire. I do think that they said, well, this is going to be annoying when it gets out, and people are going to twist this in a way that ends up being
I think that's probably
counterproductive.
true.
Yeah, and I don't think they were wrong about it, but it raised an interesting question about, well, but then what do you do? Do we stop doing science? Because we're like, well, what if people misinterpret this?
I know.
Which was really weird. But the only reason I say that is because the reviews came back, and, you know, Lauren, you submit a paper and there's going to be detailed, like, here's what I didn't like about your paper, here's what you should change. And, like, if you showed me the reviews without a decision, I would have said, oh, great. I don't think we even need to make any revisions. Like, it was just like everything was positive, and then they're like, but no thanks. And I was like, well, that's your prerogative. But yeah, it's interesting times in estrogen world. It's either completely toxic or couldn't possibly go wrong, but it's definitely not in the middle. That's all I know for sure, Lauren.
Yeah, well, I think we'll learn a lot more, especially with the brain. I know there's a kind of network of scientists right now that have, I think, $50 million to do a 3-year study looking at hormone therapy and Alzheimer's related research, and that's exciting. So, you know, the fact that they have the funding, that they have an army of experts contributing to that. So I think
with 50 million, you could actually
learn.
get an army. That's a healthy grant.
It's a healthy, I mean, people want to know.
Yeah.
And rightly so. Like, of course, if there's something that we should all be doing to, you know, prevent any kind of cognitive decline, then we want to know. But we gotta be patient.
Indeed, we do. Now, Lauren, we don't have a lot of time to dive into too much of our mail from the viewers, but first I want to give a huge shout out to the live chat. Ryan Warner said the MASS team has taught him more about science than his BS in physics, and he's expressing gratitude. So, Ryan, I appreciate that.
BS in physics sounds awful.
Yeah. I collaborated with physicists, and I could see that their life energy had been drained from them. So I think it was like a 7th-year physics PhD student, and I was like, are you okay? And they're like, it's better if you don't ask. So, yeah. But I appreciate everyone in the live chat. Apparently the brain docs, Lauren, have you heard of the brain docs? Apparently they were talking about this stuff with the brain eating itself. And someone said in response to their mother-in-law's brain eating itself, or no, their mother, at this point I'm expecting to go home and just see a smoking set of shoes when I get home to see them for Thanksgiving. So apparently, I mean, if a neuron can eat itself, who's to say it can't move further down the neck into the torso and ultimately consume the entire body? We'll never know. All right. One thing I did have to mention in the outline here, not in the live chat, Erin came across an ad on Instagram. Now, Erin, for context, she's studying for the LSAT right now. Not yet an attorney, not yet a law school student, and yet she received an advertisement for an attorney fitness coach. So it says, attorneys, you're powerful in the courtroom, but do you still feel powerful in the mirror? So this is our never-ending niching down of fitness services, brought to you by the people who brought you fitness for gingers, fitness for Catholics, fitness for lesbians, and now we have fitness for attorneys. And who's to say how far this could go? I really don't know what to expect. I don't know what the next move is, but it's always
You forgot
a treat.
the dads. Was it Christian dads?
I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that's out there.
And for Asians who are exactly 200 pounds.
Yes, the 200-pound Asian contingent. Yeah, it's wild. So folks, keep them coming. We always love getting the emails. We love getting the interaction in the live chat. Really appreciate it. Email is
frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com.
frontpagefitnesspodcast@gmail.com. I think someone accused me on Iron Culture. I think they called it a Midwestern goodbye, and now I'm all in my head about it. I had no idea what that was, but I am from the Midwest, despite my claims of being a Southern gentleman earlier.
Yeah, you're not that at all.
No, I'm not. But apparently, Midwesterners, because they're so polite, they say bye like 35 different times and just thank everyone like 7 times over on their way out the door. And in hindsight, I do that at the end of like every podcast, and now it's completely in my head. So I'm going to abruptly slam the door shut from this point forward, because after that was brought to my attention, I was like, God, that's really annoying that I do that. So Lauren, this is my commitment to you and to the Front Page Fitness family. I am going to be very abrupt, and I'm going to sometimes exit without even saying goodbye. How does that sound, Lauren?
Great.
Not an overcorrection. All right, everybody. That does it for tonight's episode. We will be back in 7 days. Everybody have a lovely week.